You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. It is never a bad time to mix in a little college football talk. And I really love looking at Bill Conley's SP Plus rankings every year. I think Bill does a good job. I want to reiterate that this is not the be-all, end-all. It is just a metric, and it is a objective metric. This is not subjective. This is nobody's opinion. Bill puts together his SP Plus rankings based on three criteria. Returning production. What team has the most teams that have the most returning production? By the way, he does note it for transfers and attrition. So, like, if you brought in a transfer that started 40 games, he tries to note that. Recent recruiting, he did also alter that this year to incorporate transfers, quality and volume. And then recent history, looking at how the program is done over the previous 4 seasons. So using those three metrics, throws them into his computer, it spits out the rankings, and here's how they look. And to me, it's always interesting to look at this to see what sort of validates or invalidates our eye test, the things we think and know. For example, you look at the top 4, and it all checks out. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama. No surprise there at all. Like, any list that's ranking the best teams in college football in whatever order should have Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama. Surprisingly, how about Penn State, 5th? Under James Franklin, they have yet to reach the upper crust, but this is one of those things that says the numbers suggest Penn State is probably better than what they've shown on the field. Tennessee at 6. Maybe a little bit surprising there, considering you're losing Hendon Hooker, you're losing Jalen Hyatt. A lot of the guys that produce such that gigantic offensive season might be an indicator that, hey, man, you're going to take a step back. But they got Tennessee 6th there, followed by your Fighting Tigers of LSU at 7. Not surprisingly, the returning production on defense is kind of what drags LSU down just a bit. Oregon, Texas, Southern Cal wrap up the top 10, followed by Florida State, Clemson, Utah, Oklahoma, Notre Dame at 15, Washington, and how about Texas A&M at 17, Ole Miss at 18, Florida at 20. So you start to get into some of those next-tier SEC schools that show and illustrate that these metrics suggest Texas A&M should be better than 5-7. Florida should be better than 6-6. And how they, if they're able to outperform what they did a year ago and perform up to the level of expectation, are going to be sort of the fascinating things to watch this year. If you're scoring at home, the average rating by conference, the SEC blew everybody away. The average rating on the SP Plus by conference, the SEC at 16. Second is the Big Ten at 10. The Big 12 is at 10 also. Barely differentiating from the Big 12, excuse me. Then the Pac-12, big gap. Then the ACC. Then, how about this? Like, this is the stunning thing. Like, this illustrates so often what I talk about with the haves and have-nots in college athletics, in this particular college football. When you look at the conference-by-conference breakdown on the SP Plus, as I mentioned, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC. So the top 5 Power 5 are far and away the best. Because when you drop one below, so their average rating, I don't want to confuse you with numbers, but it goes 16, 10.1, 10, 7.1, 6.1. Line at the ACC, the 6th best conference, the American, a negative 7.4. You're just talking about a massive gap between the Power 5, even the bottom of the Power 5, and the top of the Group of 5. That's not to suggest that a team in the Group of 5 couldn't have a really good year and be competitive against Power 5 teams. But the conferences as a whole, It suggests just how much of a gap there is there. I always kind of look at that and go, what's interesting? The ACC starts this season with a new favorite, and that, as we've mentioned, is Florida State at 11, one spot ahead of Clemson at number 12. The gap between Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten and everyone else is massive. You've got Ohio State 2, Michigan number 3. You got Penn State 5. But after that, when you look at the rest of the Big Ten, I mean, you have to go all the way to Wisconsin at 25 before you see another Big Ten team. So you have your Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, gigantic gap to Wisconsin. What else stood out here in Bill Connelly's SP Plus rankings? I do like how he has, like, who are the teams to buy and who are the teams to sell. He's buying Tennessee, buying Texas, buying Oklahoma, buying Texas A&M, who's unranked in the way too early top 25, but saying essentially this is now an experienced team that returns a bunch from a disappointing season, but should be able to take that step. Stop me if you've heard that before. But right after that, the other team that he's buying is Florida. And I think all of a sudden those two teams become probably the teams to watch in the SEC. I don't know that any coach enters the SEC on the hot seat in 2023. Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri may be the closest. And I don't know that Missouri's going to move on from a coach so quickly. But if you want to look at coaches that could play themselves onto the hot seat, let Billy Napier have another 500 season. Let Jimbo Fisher go 8-4 again. And those coaches are the two that could absolutely play themselves on the hot seat. But effectively what this metric is saying is those teams have really talented players. They return a lot of production from teams that weren't great a year ago in their final results, but should be on the come up in 2023. And then the other one that was interesting, we talked about teams to sell, TCU, Oregon State, Texas Tech. But the other one that was interesting, that he rode the fence on, was Florida State. He said, I could have put Florida State on the sell list because the Seminoles are projected 7 spots worse in the SP Plus than on the way too early top 25. It's the only real disagreement in the top 10. It says, but the schedule hands them a massive opportunity. They're projected favorites and of at least 9 points in 9 of the 12 games they play, with 3 toss-ups. LSU, Clemson, and then at Florida, of course. They'll need a break or two to live up to the top 5 hype, but see if the Noles iffy overall, if they remain iffy overall with their recent history. So Florida State is sort of that team that he straddles the fence on to say, that's a team that with your 3 toss-ups, if those 3 toss-ups don't go your way, you're talking about a team that becomes massively disappointing relative to preseason expectations. So Bill Connelly's SP Plus rankings are out. Got LSU preseason number 7. He says he will update those post-spring because you better believe between now and the start of the season, you're going to see more defections, more additions to teams. Well, you'll see injuries and a lot of things that will affect how these things shake out. So we'll keep an eye on them as of right now, though. That's where it stands. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.